Okay, so welcome to the session on collaborative learning with Microsoft Teams, working in project teams. So I'm Uwe Richter, and together with Mark, my colleague, we work for Anglia Learning Teaching, which is Central Learning Teaching Unit at Anglia Ruskin. And we will talk about what we call a Ruskin module in this presentation. So what we would like to do is introduce you very briefly to what Ruskin modules are, to give you a bit of the context and the kind of approaches we took to the module, which is around wicked problems, project and teamwork. And that's really the journey we take students on. So looking at Microsoft Teams, that's the supporting platform for the project and teamwork. And how that works as a collaborative synchronous online platform, and then we'll end on some reflections. So do please put comments and questions in the chat, and either Mark or I will then respond to that as we go through as well. Okay, so I'd like to start with a quick poll just to find out what you're familiar with and what you have used. So this is a poll everywhere one. If you can either use the link at the bottom there or the QR code. Okay, so most of you are familiar with Microsoft Teams meeting, as well as class Teams, OneDrive. I think that's quite common across most institutions now. Some of you use Adobe Connect and Blackboard Collaborate, and we're using Zoom at the moment. Okay, so quite a nice spread of different technologies. Let me just change again and go back to the presentation. Okay, so Mark will talk a little bit about the Ruskin modules and how we approach that.
Hi, thanks, Uwe. Ruskin modules are interdisciplinary breadth modules at Anglia Ruskin University. They are not related to any particular topic. In fact, they're specifically, well, mostly designed not to relate to any particular topic because they are compulsory modules for all level 5 undergraduate students, not including certain modules with PSRB requirements. And this was introduced as an institution-wide initiative in 2021. So we're now, Uwe and I are now preparing for our third delivery of this module. Ruskin modules are built on 3 pillars of interdisciplinarity, sustainability, and employability, entrepreneurship. They're designed to be interdisciplinary. As I say, they're not restricted to any faculty or field of study. So we have a range, and students get to choose which module they do. So we tend to have a range of different disciplines. They're focused around sustainability and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And the whole purpose of these is to improve and enhance students' employabilities. And the focus of the modules are wicked problems. So we give them problems to solve that are practically unsolvable. I don't want to make it too easy for them. Thanks, Uwe. Next slide. So our module is called, what's our module called? Our module is called Where Do You Belong in This City? And we deliver this module primarily on our 2 main core campuses of Chelmsford and Cambridge. So this provides students the opportunity to explore their identity and place within the city where they're based on this module. And they get to choose a wicked problem about urban development. For example, there's a large shopping mall in Cambridge which has been sold, and there's lots of conversation happening over the last 9 to 12 months about how it should be redeveloped, what purpose should it be used for. Obviously, there are a wide range of stakeholders involved in the discussions about this, as there are with all of our wiki problems. And we ask our teams to provide a sustainable solution in the form of a digital artifact that tries to address as many stakeholder views as possible. Thanks, Uwe. So we give them, we generated 14 wicked problems for them to choose from. We use wicked problems to scaffold their approach to teamwork. Once students, we ask students to vote on the top 3 preferred wicked problems out of the list of 14 we give them, and then we build teams around the, well, essentially we build teams around the wicked problems that they choose, so that we have students in groups where they are all focused on the same thing. Thanks, Uwe.
So this is now the journey that we take students on, and it's a team journey as well as a project journey. So as Mark mentioned, students choose their wicked problem in week 5. So the previous module delivery was actually in week 3, so they had more time, but we found that because the wicked problems are much more focused now in the second iteration, we wanted to give them a bit more condensed time. So it starts in week 5. We then have team formation, which is around getting to know each other, icebreakers, agreeing how they want to work together, choosing somebody to lead on the project, and possibly looking at strengths and weaknesses within that team, some roles. So the idea is that we have interdisciplinary teams, so students from different disciplines. So a graphic designer may bring something different to a wicked problem discussion than the business student or the biomed student, for example. What is really important, because these modules are all delivered online, is that they figure out how to communicate with each other. And I will show you how team facilitates that, the class team, but we also encourage students to set up a WhatsApp group, because we found for some students that's an easier way of getting in touch and keeping in touch. Again, scaffolding all the way through the journey, project plan and risk assessment. Risk assessment, again, is about thinking about, well, what happens if a key team member just doesn't show up or doesn't contribute? How do we manage these kind of challenges? Towards 2/3 down into the project, we want students to think about how the team is doing, how they do in the team. So there's a self, peer, and team evaluation, which is in the VLE. And then they present their virtual artifact, a digital artifact in form of a virtual gallery. So they basically walk through that gallery and give each other peer feedback. And then finally, they reflect on that journey in the reflective essay. So that's basically the module and the journey we take students on. So I'd like to show you how we used Microsoft class teams to do this. So before, I'd like to ask you in the chat how you have used Microsoft Class Teams as a collaborative platform. And as you type into the chat, I will then talk about how we have used it. So I think I'll use the screen dumps rather than going into the live site, but I can, if there are any questions, I can show you that in the actual site. So you can see within that we have lots of channels in there. The general channel is used for the weekly seminar session. So we have weekly webinars to discuss and introduce particular topics, different activities. So we use the chat, we use polls, and we use the breakout rooms as part of that kind of seminar. And you can see the seminar session there at the bottom is the link to that webinar, but we also use forms and things like that for feedback. Now, all the teams have their private team channel, and they can use their dedicated time within the 3-hour timetable sessions for them to work on their project in the team, in their team side. That's private to them, so we as tutors can access all of them and can facilitate that by channel hopping. But the other students don't see each other's team contributions. Just so those are the different channels there, and the weekly seminars. So we use the file area and the posts as well. So central documents like templates, like the risk assessment, for example, or the project plan template, can be picked up within the file area of the channel posts. We also put them into the individual team sites so they can work collaboratively on those documents and files. And yeah, I mentioned the polls and surveys you can use. So within Teams, you can plug in different apps. So at the top, you can see there's Canvas. So we link into the VLE, so they can actually access the VLE straight from the course in the VLE there. The whiteboard if they want to do some brainstorming. And you can see the file areas here within the file area. So the posts within that is for communication files. They can create their artifact, share, collaborate on it. So most students use a PowerPoint, a narrated PowerPoint, but they can edit that in the sessions live synchronously or asynchronously. And you can see the project stages, that's where we put the template as well. So from a process point of view, so those are the two links we add as well. So from a process point of view, we ask students to finish, for example, the risk assessment or the project plan or the storyboard, and then share that in the general area so that we have a session, a breakout room session where students can then give feedback to each other's project plans, for example. So that's the kind of cross-team collaboration on that. This year, we took a slightly different approach. We had breakout rooms and we asked team members to bring in and share their project plan, for example, and get feedback from that. So these breakout rooms are across teams rather than within teams. So another tool that sits within Microsoft Teams is the class notebook. And it's a very powerful tool. You can use it as a portfolio tool, but we use a very basic kind of structure. So we had an activity very early on in the first week where students had to comment on a picture of Cambridge and Chelmsford. So you can see the Cambridge picture there and just say what they are seeing on the picture and share that. What was important is that the instructions need to be clear and repeated wherever you can and how often you can. Those are the instructions again, but that is actually the collaborative side. So students then respond to that in the group they're in, and that can then be shared back in the plenary. So that's a typical breakout activity. Yeah. So having said that, Notebook is it's a very sophisticated tool, so you can do a lot. You can actually define students by groups, so you can put students in particular groups and they can do activities, they can share, you can push out activities into these groups. But for each tool that you use, and I think that's a common kind of experience, students need to get their head around it. So they have to be introduced to it, and that will take time. And actually a colleague of us on another Ruskin module, he calls it the chaos week. The first week, he basically just explores tools with students and plays with it. So the students get familiar, but the more tools you use, the more challenging this may get. Yeah, so again, the instructions there repeated from the original one, and then you have the group responses within that. Okay, just a question. So what kind of challenges have you found with engaging students in online synchronous activities? And then I will talk a little bit about our reflection. I think I need to change over. Yeah, reluctance and silence. Yeah, some find technology, especially the multitude of technologies, a challenge. Participation. Yeah. Some takes time. So when we have activities in the text chat, you have to wait a bit until responses are coming in, because the students, first of all, they have to type, they have to think, they have to type, and that all takes a bit of time. Yes, this bedroom is quite interesting. So the debate around camera on and off and using the voice. So students are often in a private area, so their bedroom, or they have a bad hair day. We found that quite a few students access this on their mobile phone. So having screen sharing using different, like we do now with Poll Everywhere, accessing different activities in different spaces can be quite a challenge on a small screen like a mobile phone. Okay. Good. So reading homework. Okay, so I'll just change over to the presentation again. So here are some of our reflections. So Microsoft Class Teams is a really powerful tool. There's so much you can do for online collaboration. But as I mentioned, students need to get familiar with tools. Even though we used Microsoft Teams throughout the pandemic, we were quite, well, astonished how little students were familiar with actually collaborating with each other, accessing different files and working together. So sometimes we had instances where we set a task, we send them out of breakout room with a link to a collaborative document, and went to the breakout room and there was nothing happening. And then we looked at the document and they were typing away. So they didn't talk to each other, they just typed away. So they're different ways students engage. And it took about halfway through the module for them to start talking to each other in text and voice and switching on the camera. Activity instructions need to be really clear and repeated. So if you have it in PowerPoint, then put it into the breakout room again or into the Teams channel, into the post, just that they know what they need to tackle. And looking at technology, less is probably more, finding the right balance between the different technologies or tools you use and being effective. Team and project work are an important employability skill, but many students actually don't like group and teamwork. So making a case why this is important, what they will learn from it, and how beneficial that might be for their degree as well as employment later on. We found that online attendance and participation can be a real challenge. So these modules are undergraduate modules, and that getting students involved, especially for the teamwork, can be a challenge. And they're also still somewhat unfamiliar with effective online communication and collaboration, especially if attendance is a challenge. And finally, looking at team and project work, so how can we address some of these challenges? So take students with you on the journey using scaffolding. So probably saw a lot of the activities, there is a lot of scaffolding, there is a lot of guidance. and we take them through it step by step. An idea around the online attendance participation is to make it a professional requirement. So when you have nurses, if they don't attend, they get kicked off the course because they don't fulfill the professional requirement of their professional body. So actually saying, well, if you're in an employment situation, you can decide if you show up or not. You have to engage and show up. Again, introduce students to online communication, ask them to agree on the way they want to communicate with each other in the team. And that may include WhatsApp. So that worked really well once they have set up a WhatsApp group. But overall, it's really to develop the comfortability with engaging online in an online community. Okay, so that's what we wanted to share. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Uwe, and to Mark for that. Really authentic. We hear all the time about the importance of authenticity in active learning tasks and in assessment. And I think there's nothing more authentic than solving a problem with other people. I think that's what we all do very, very often in our working lives. There's a couple of questions from the chat, and I can see Beth's got her hand up, so it may be an overlap there because Beth had one of the questions in the chat. So Beth, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just my question from the chat. Yeah, it sounds a really good activity, really good module. How do you enroll the students onto the teams and channels? Do you have some sort of integration? Is there a manual process? Do they use a join code?
It's integrated. So with every module, we get a Canvas site and a VLE site, and we get a team site. So they are set up automatically, and the students are added to those. We have no control over the students on Canvas. That's locked down. We do have a little bit more control in team sites, so we can actually then add students into the private team channels and manage that.
Right, so the channels are done manually, are they? But the teams,
yes,
students are imported into the team.
They're all in the class team, and they all have access to the channel.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I've got a quick one. Just around group work and participation. I know you said that you sort of factored this in with risk assessment, and it's good for them to reflect on that themselves. But do you have any other mechanisms for protecting against coasting? I suppose would be the best. It's always something that comes up, isn't it, in group work?
Yeah, there's a bit of a stick and carrot approach. So the carrot is that we want students to choose their wicked problem, so they identify with it because they come from different disciplines, and then give them space and time to work together to get to know each other, and have learning agreements and things like this. The stick approach is that we use a survey where they rate which wicked problem they want to use, and we chase them. So we get something like 85% respond to that. So the students that don't respond to that, don't make a choice of wicked problem, we put them together in a group and said, well, so you have another chance to choose your wicked problem, but within your team. But what we found is that these teams are the non-engager or low engager. And so we kind of already filtering out the students that would cause problem in a team. We also, so part of the learning agreement is that we encourage students to sort out team problems themselves. So they reflect on how do you respond to those challenges, and then they can escalate it to us, and we can then chase students. So we do contact students who don't engage or have low engagement, and said, is there a problem? Do you want to talk with us? So the ultimate stick, I guess, is that we ask in the artifact that they produce, they have to create a credit page. So they basically said who did what within that artifact. And if a student isn't mentioned in that team, that student will fail.
There's an additional stick on that as well, though, isn't there, Uwe? Because students are required to self-police to avoid plagiarism as well. So if one student plagiarizes on the team artifact and the other students don't pick them up on it, if we spot that, they will fail the module because they share the responsibility for the final submission. So they're very, very, very highly encouraged to operate in teams, and we have found that students that don't engage in the teamwork don't do very well in the assignment.
Yeah, it's another layer of the authenticity, isn't it? About that's the kind of thing that you would be able to have to deal with in real life. So it makes sense as part of it. Right, it's 1:31. We have arrived at our destination time. There is another question in the chat, which I don't want to ignore, but perhaps a really quick answer. Does it ever get confusing with students using both Teams and WhatsApp? Wondering also what you do if some students do wish to use WhatsApp, or do the students just work this issue out themselves? Any issues there very quickly?
Yes,
no, so the students spontaneously used WhatsApp rather than using the Teams channel space. I strongly suspect they just didn't want to have discussions in front of us, and just went off and did their own thing. Uwe, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so the team channel is really something that they use, and it's a space we have in timetable sessions. But WhatsApp is something where it seemed to be easier for them to contact each other. So that isn't a conflict, it's more complementary. Yeah,
purposeful use for horses for courses, as we might say. Wonderful. Well, thank you both. Thank you to Uwe and Mark, and again, thank you to Helena for your session earlier on. Hopefully you'll agree it's been a really enlightening session, more active learning strategies that, and really actionable as well, things that you could pick up and use without, too much kind of effort yourself. I think that's always the most valuable type of resource in these sorts of things. So thanks all again. Thank you everybody for attending this session. The next session, I believe, starts in around 7 minutes. So pick your carriage and enjoy your onward journey.